Hey, welcome back to the Meat Conversations. It's Phil Wohl. How you doing? Resident mind expert. Whatever. I thought today I would talk a little bit about writing, and more specifically, writing a book. Because the more I get on in the years, the more people are just amazed. People knew me all my whole life, at least my early life, as just an athlete. They didn't know I was a writer. Some people did, but most people didn't. And when they hear I'm a writer, it's to me insulting the way they react. What? Almost like, you wrote a book? Like anybody could do that. So basically marginalize anything I'm doing with the brain up here. Saying, oh, if you wrote a book, I could write a book. And people always have that feeling. I've written 40 some odd books now, so it's not the volume of books. I just love to write. I hope people get joy out of reading my books, but I get joy out of writing my books. I'm not doing it for accolades. I'm not doing it to be famous. If I was, I would go into schools and talk to kids about writing, because I do that now. And I've done that in the past. It's been a while since I've done that. But the point for me is creating, and getting it out of your system. So if you hear I write books, don't be condescending and be like, oh, I could write a book. It's not that easy, but it is. So let me just tell you how you go about doing that, all right? Everybody wants to write the story of their life. Thinking their life is the most exciting thing that ever happened since the dawn of time. Probably not. You know, we have some similar experiences. I write books. I take a central theme, what I've experienced. I wrote a 7-part vampire series, so none of that actually happened to me. But there was a dynamic in there of family and of how people interact. So take a little bit of yourself and infuse it into your book. Everybody wants to write their life story. Sure. Do I write about points in my life? Yes. The Meat Conversations, I'll go back to points in my life and have conversations, of course. But those conversations never took place. And I put different characters in there that never were around. So I try to also take things that didn't happen and think about it, what if that did happen? What if that person and I continued on a path? Or what if I continue to do this? Or whatever it is. You try thinking about that, and that becomes interesting. Like if you really have a good imagination, put that right in a book. And let me tell you something. That's usually more interesting than your life. I hate to say it. I don't want to be that way. You know, again, we've all had things that happen in our life, but usually when I write fiction, let me just say that right now. So, and a lot of people have done this a long time, where they write fiction and you change people's names and okay, whatever. It could be true, whatever. Most of everything has a basis of truth. So that's the way you got to look at writing, especially fiction. You just have to put yourself into characters, feel things, see different things, imagine what things would be, but you start with a central idea. And what I was saying was, and I lost my thought for a minute, that every time I try to tell a true story, it's hard for me to write. Number one, hard for me to write. Second thing is, I'll give it to my wife to read sometimes. She goes, it sounds angry. It sounds like you're upset. It's much harder to read than your usual stuff. My usual stuff is very conversational. If you want to read any of it, go on Smashwords, put my name Phil Wohl, Wohl, in there as a search. There's 40 plus books. Go into Amazon Kindle, same thing. There's probably 30 some odd books there. It's very conversational. People say to me sometimes, I feel like I'm talking to you sometimes, or I feel like I'm listening, and that's good. That's good. For me, my influences like Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park and other things, and Eric Siegel, Love Story and other things. I read that book first time. My parents had a bunch of books on the shelf. I looked at a book that was a little thinner. It's like Love Story. There was another one like The Class. There was a couple of books. I read them. I'm like, I could do that. And I was like 15, 16 years old. I'm like, I could do that. And I started doing it. So whether I do it at a high level, up to you, but I feel I get so much out of it. And that's really the point, isn't it? To have an outlet, to vent your frustration, to advance your creativity, to do all these things, and to start something and complete it. When I write a book, I aim for 20,000 words. You could do something for 10,000, 5,000 words, whatever it is. I've written books 70,000 plus words, whatever it is. That's like 200 plus pages. The 20,000 would be like 100 pages. Who cares? If you have a short story, whatever it is, it's your story. It's a story. But start with a central basis. I like to infuse different things in there. I really do. Even when I wrote High School Rivalry and a lot of things had a true basis, if I just told the truth, at the time I was living in my hometown, that would have been really uncomfortable. Family-wise, a lot of different things. Ex-girlfriends. I wrote some not so nice things about that. But hey, I was venting. People weren't happy. It's not a popularity contest. It's funny. Things happen in your life and piss you off. It's good to put it in a book. It really is. Turn that character into something else. Do something else with it. Get it out of your system. Because to throw a hatred on that person, to curse at that person, to argue with that person, to carry anger around, nah. So if you really want to write a book, if you're saying, if Phil can do it, anybody can do it. Years and years of writing books. But you can do anything. You can write a book. Write a book. Come up with a central theme. I wrote a book called Locker Room. I was just thinking about what's a central thing in high school that everybody could identify. Locker room. Okay. Whatever. High school prom. Not a good book, but just a central idea. Come up with a central idea from your past and just write about it. Write about it. I wrote a book called, what was it now? High school, it wasn't education. I can't remember the name of that, where people went back to school at a later age. It was called High School Experiment, where a town was fully employed. There was a water company in town. Everybody worked for the water company. Where did I come up with this idea? I don't know. I just thought it'd be interesting. I always love these movies that are like reunion movies. Grosse Point Blank. I love that movie. I just love that. I've watched that movie like 800 times. I love Grosse Point Blank with John Cusack and Minnie Driver. Recently, I watched the movie 10 Years. I love that movie. Channing Tatum. There's a million people in that movie. Channing Tatum, his wife, Jenna Dewan Tatum was in the movie with him at the time. There's like a bunch of like A-list stars in that movie. Watch it. It's very interesting. Justin Long's in there. There's a bunch of people that make it like a really interesting movie. The guy who plays like Captain America now is in the movie. It's a funny movie. It's funny. It's poignant. It gets to a lot of emotions of how time shifts things what you remember from high school. Like, take a central theme like that. I find it really interesting. Romeo and Michelle's reunion, high school reunion, whatever that's called, that's just funny, but it's the same thing. People have trepidation. I was like this in high school. People remember you a certain way. Like, I remember my 20th high school reunion, and I guess I was considered a jock. I was, for a better term, whatever, I didn't party. I was friends with everybody. It wasn't like that at all. But I went back to the reunion. Sure, I talked to the athletes, but I found myself talking to more of the National Honor Society people and smart people, things that have done things with their lives, because it was just interesting conversations to have. It wasn't like, look, I'm smart now. It was just like you naturally gravitate to who you are and who you enjoy talking to. So I feel like it's an interesting experiment, back to high school experiment. The water company, the town, it went belly up. The guy who created the company, started the company, had a heart attack. His son had to take over. Who was a moron. He didn't know how to run a company. He didn't know what he was doing. The company, he did some acquisitions that went really bad. It came back to the company. The company pretty much went belly up. All the people were out of work. The town was in trouble. So the founder of the company moved someplace else, but he was watching everybody from afar, and he wanted to reinvigorate the town. So what he did was he tried this high school experiment where people went back to school, people got re-educated. They actually went to school with their kids who were in high school, which made it even more interesting, but it put them in situations where the normal classes were not in play, especially for the older people, because they had a lot of history. They had things they had to work out. They had relationships, new relationships burgeoned. So it became interesting, and eventually they duplicated that model in different towns that weren't doing well. And there was the way to monetize that, and the town got back on its feet, and people had jobs, and they were making money, and things got better. So I guess I combined, half it was combining like my love of the high school experience and that age and looking back on that, and also my business experience, my finance experience, investing experience, and talking about how all that plays into it. I did that in another book also. These are ideas that just spiral, and sometimes I plan it. I used to plan it a lot more than I did, where I planned chapters. Now I just go. And I feel like if I have a set idea, sometimes I put it aside for a couple days, and then I'll be able to evolve it in different ways. So don't smother it. Right when the moment hits, when I'm fluent and I'm lost in what I'm doing and I'm gone someplace else and I'm actually in the scene, best writing I do. When I'm struggling and I'm just trying to fill the page, no, stop. Put it aside. Put the computer aside, put the pen aside, the pencil, whatever you're using, stylus. Am I covering all the bases? Take your experiences, infuse that into the books, infuse that into characters, in your stories. The other one I was going to talk about was Organic Nation. I went through as an analyst. I was an analyst on Wall Street. The whole WorldCom scandal. I wasn't involved in it, of course, but I was an analyst, and I saw things that were happening before that. The way I observed people. I'm an empath. I observed this CEO, Bernie Evers, what he was doing, and he was a mean guy, and he was direct, and he was 6'5" ex-basketball coach, and he was a very tough guy. And I saw him one day glad-handing a bunch of investment bankers and smiling and laughing. I'm like, who the hell is that guy? So that spurred me to write a book loosely based on that called Organic Nation, where a guy starts this organic chain of restaurants. He started small in a small town and built it up, became a public company, and then he started siphoning money off. He started foundations, didn't even do anything with those. So he was making up earnings as he went along. He went to jail, and then the rehab process. So take your experiences, take them, and infuse that into characters and books. And you can do it. I know, stupid Phil can do it. Phil, who didn't pay much attention in high school and middle school. Yeah, that was me. That's fine. I had other issues. So eventually, like I said before, I have two master's degrees now. So eventually I got over that. And I'm very productive now, and I'm hyper focused, and I get shit done. You know, I used to procrastinate like crazy in those days, and now I don't procrastinate at all. I get an assignment, boom, I'm doing it. I have an idea for something, get at it, because ideas usually are not like fine wine or something that ages. It gets better with age. It doesn't. It's gone. Forget the idea. You forget the intensity of how you were thinking about initially. Yeah, you may be able to recreate parts of it, but get at it. Case in point, first book I wrote, I never published. It's called Differing Opinions. It's about a college experience. I wrote it in a diary form, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior years. I had it reported in the thoughts of the people by like an angel type character who was supposed to keep a journal on all this stuff. It was a decent idea. I finished it. I printed it out. Now I only have through the junior year. I never published it because I lost the flow of the characters. I always think I want to finish it. There's something about that where that got me going. That was the first time I completed a book of decent size. I had midpoints where all the characters would theoretically would get together in a roundtable discussion. They would talk about things and their experiences. They were intertwined a lot in the book. So, yeah, maybe at some point I'll finish it, but that's the kind of thing where you finish something, you publish it, you move to the next thing. It's there, it's done. So if you have any questions, don't be afraid to comment. Start a conversation with me about writing books or anything, about the meat conversations. And as usual, I really look forward to talking with you soon again. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're able to clear it out a little bit. And namaste, okay? Take care.